My golden child sister stole my wife's earrings and my parents refused to do anything about it, so I ruined their reputation. Growing up, I was always neglected in comparison to my older sister. She was the miracle baby who was the one to survive after my mother's 2 miscarriages. I, on the other hand, was a complete accident. This caused my parents to heavily favor her, and my sister relished in this favoritism as often as she could. When we were younger, she stole my belongings with no repercussions, treated me like dirt, embarrassed me in front of my friends, and so on. My parents also played a heavy part in all of this. Her birthdays were way more extravagant. She would even get presents on my birthday. My parents attended her special events and not mine, so on and so on. Needless to say, this caused a huge rift in between us when I moved away for college when I turned 18. I was now no contact with them, and my mental health improved a lot due to this. In college is where I met the love of my life, Cindy. She was in one of my classes and we clicked very well. I developed a major crush on her quickly, and worked up the courage to ask her out. She agreed on a date and here we are, 7 years later, happily married. Cindy knows about my past with my sister and parents, and thus was very reluctant to open up a form of communication between us and them when they reached out a year ago. I was skeptical at first too, but I gave my family a second chance. At first it seemed like the right choice. Over this year, I had built my relationship with my sister and parents back up to decent levels. We talked about my life and theirs regularly enough, and it really seemed like my parents had changed their act. It seemed like my sister had changed too. She apologized for her actions when we were younger. Our relationship became so much better. In fact, my parents and sister asked me if they could come over during the holidays to meet Cindy. Considering they were not invited to our wedding or anything, they had not met her. I discussed their offer with Cindy and she was firmly against it. I'm ashamed to say I fought Cindy on it. She said she had a bad feeling about it and told me that meeting up with them was a bad choice. She always had amazing intuition about these things and I should have listened. I'm such an idiot for not. Via stubbornness, I convinced Cindy that everything was okay and there was no harm in meeting my parents, and she reluctantly gave in. I let my parents know they could come over and they did. They arrived next weekend, and when I opened the door for them I was astonished to see that they had not changed much in the past 7 years. I saw my sister too, who did not want to be there as much as my parents. Nonetheless, I welcomed them in and introduced Cindy to them. We all sat down for dinner and caught up. We all strayed away from the topic of how neglected I was as a child and rather made small talk, catching up on mom and dad's business, my sister's college studies, and so on. There was only one point in the dinner when we were close to having an argument. That happened when my sister insulted the food Cindy, but Cindy quickly put her in her place. My sister tried to argue, but I shut her down too. She looked to our parents for help, who stayed silent, and my sister was visibly shocked by the fact our dear parents were not coming to her aid immediately like they always did. Shortly after this, perhaps 10 minutes later, she excused herself to go to the bathroom, and came down maybe 2 or 3 minutes later. The rest of the dinner went well and we said our goodbyes. After dinner my wife and I discussed the whole thing and came to the conclusion that my parents had possibly changed, but my sister was as insufferable as ever and there was no way we could have contact with her. That's when my wife went upstairs and left me downstairs, telling me to put on a movie and that she'll be back down in a minute. A minute later I heard her frantically making noise upstairs. Whatever was going on was very serious, as I could tell she was turning the room upside down. I heard the bed being banged against the wall, drawers slamming open and shut, and her yelling, "Where are they?" I came upstairs to ask my wife what was going on and she told me that her earrings were missing. Those earrings. For context, my wife owns a special pair of earrings she only wears on the most rare occasions. These earrings are very old, passed down for now 4 generations, and are priceless to her, as well as valued very high in the market. Well, these earrings were missing. We turned the house upside down and did not find them. With no luck, my wife asked me if it was possible that my sister took them. That's when I realized. After getting angry that Cindy shut her insults down, she went upstairs. My wife had left the earrings on the nightstand. My sister used to be a kleptomaniac when we were little, and my parents always enabled her. It all clicked. It simply had to be my sister. My wife flipped out at me, yelling at me for inviting someone I knew was a kleptomaniac into our home and not informing her of it. She stated had she known she would have never allowed my sister to come over. I apologized over and over to her, and it took a lot for me to convince her not to take my head off. I realized I had effed up very badly and rushed to contact my parents. I was able to call them and demanded to speak to my sister. I accused her of stealing my wife's earrings, and I got a, maybe I did, maybe I didn't from her, alongside a laugh. That settled it. I knew she did it, she knew I knew she did it, but there was nothing I could do to get them back. Or could I? I had a way to go nuclear on them, but at first I didn't want to. I assured my wife I would get her the earrings back. I contacted my parents demanding for them to force her to give them back. They told me that although they sympathized with my wife, my sister was a grown woman and they could not force her to do anything. They also told me I had not proof, and although that was true, everyone under the sun knew she had stole it. So here is where I threatened my parents to go nuclear. They had mentioned to me that they were still running their business over the dinner, and I remember that business very well. It was very shady, taxes were avoided, it was a miracle nobody had reported them for it yet. It was a fake charity that looked legit on the outside more or less. Well, I told my parents that either their daughter give us back the earrings, or there will be an anonymous tip given about their business. My parents crapped themselves so much that they drove for 5 hours with my sister the very next day to give me back those earrings. Well, my wife convinced me to be petty. I didn't inform anyone of the business, but I texted the extended family group chat, which I was added into once my parents contacted me again. This text informed everyone of what my sister did, what my parents did, and warned them all to never let my sister into their homes again, or there is a food chance that their belongings will also be stolen. My parents have contacted me asking to come over and talk without my sister, and I agreed but told them we shall talk at a coffee shop, as I am uncomfortable letting them into my home again. My wife did not want me speaking to them, but as far as I am concerned, they're dead to me. I'm only going to talk for closure.